Hello, welcome to this video, and this video could get a bit weird. A couple of people have asked me to do this, and that is to talk about me and ELP, and this video will be called Me and ELP, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, formed in 1970, perhaps the first progressive rock supergroup, definitely one of the first progressive rock bands of all time. A huge influence. They almost like define the genre. Okay. Recently I did a video on the 10 greatest prog bands of all time. I spent a long time coming up with a list, working out who'd be at number one, who'd be at number two, really going through, you know, should I put Camel in? What about Van der Graaf Generator? They should go. Focus, oh my God, am I going to put Focus in? And all that went on. Never once did I think about ELP. So if you watch the video, it is quite funny as you see me get to number 2 on the list and then suddenly realise I've totally forgotten about Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Now, I'm friends with Carl Palmer's brother, Steve Palmer. I know Carl's nephew, Ian Palmer. They're two of one of my favourite drummers, you know, they're incredible drummers. And so Carl's from Birmingham. I have links with the band. They're a British progressive rock band. Why did I forget about them? Why did I forget about them? A number of people found this very humorous that I did, and I knew it would be humorous. That's why I left it in the video. You know, I think when you watch my videos, if you're a fan of these videos, you know I'm making this up as I go along. I don't plan these at all. I just want to talk and see where I go. I just enjoy the journey. And so this video is wide open. I don't know what I'm going to say about ELP and what it is with me and ELP. If you were to... Where do I start with this? The thing with ELP, what's hard is that if I was to talk about ELP, I'm going to, on the whole, say how great they are. In terms of bands, I like ELP. You know, I could quite happily stick any ELP album on in the car, and I really enjoy it. I have a connection to them. I listened to them loads when I was younger, and I can feel that nostalgia as well when I put certain albums on. Definitely, I can feel, oh my God, this is absolutely magical stuff. But I don't respond to them now in the same way as I do as listen to Yes or King Crimson. If I listen to Yes, I have this feeling, oh my God, this is immensely profound music. This is the great achievement of rock music here. This is like the Beatles. You know, this is like Jimi Hendrix. It's on the same level. You know, if I were to put And You and I on by Yes, or put on Starless by King Crimson, if I was to put on Fountains of Salmansis by Genesis, I would have this profound feeling. And I think there are certain tracks even with the ELP. See, I'm searching around to find what it is. Why do I forget them? You know, what is it with me and ELP? Well, I now only have one album by ELP. When I was younger, I sold them all. I had most of them up to their split in the late 70s, but I sold them. You know, I sold them to buy jazz fusion albums. They didn't mean that much to me. That's why when I talk about ELP, I haven't got anything to hold up because I got rid of the albums. The reason I got rid of them is because perhaps there was a period where I decided I didn't like them. Perhaps that's what it is. More recently, I decided to have a listen to my favourite album by them, which is Trilogy. That was the album I really loved. And as soon as the first track dropped, I was taken away. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. ELP. They're very, very important to the progressive rock genre. The thing with progressive rock is that King Crimson come out in 1968, 69. I think 69, isn't it? With In the Court of the Crimson King. They almost like define the genre. The Moody Blues have done stuff. A few other bands have pointed at progressive rock. You know, they've got Frank Zappa doing stuff, but the genre that we would really say is proper progressive rock is really ushered in by King Crimson. I think many bands were influenced by King Crimson. I know Yes were, I think perhaps Genesis were, and that changes the face of music, and bands slowly start to form the genre as it is. ELP are really interesting in this history because, especially with Greg Lake and Keith Emerson, they're also pioneers. Greg Lake is the singer on In the Court of the Crimson King. He's the guy who sings 21st Century Schizoid Man. So Greg Lake is a pioneer. And Greg Lake's a really interesting musician. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He's not a virtuoso like Keith Emerson. He can play acoustic guitar, bass. He's an incredible songwriter. He's a singer. A really incredible musician. Keith Emerson has been in the Nice. And the Nice are really on the same level as King Crimson in terms of creating this genre. So there's two musicians coming here that are at the forefront. It's not like the guys in Yes. The guys in Yes do not know what they're doing on the first album in terms of progressive rock. They're writing some great tunes. Time and the Word, they're moving towards it. The Yes album, they're nearly there. You know, they bring in Steve Howe, they bring in Bill Brook. Well, no, they bring in Steve Howe, then eventually Rick Wakeman, and you start to hear them forming into sort of a progressive rock band. For so many bands, that's the case. With ELP, they're already there. Even though they're formed in 1970s, those musicians are coming in with the blueprint of progressive rock. The first album that drops in 1970 is an incredible progressive rock album. They've got it from day one. You know, they've also got Greg Lake's beautiful acoustic guitar sort of songs, which I love so much. You know, like Lucky Man is a beautiful song. The second album, Tarkus, they do a whole side-long prog epic, which I think is one of the first proper prog epics. Of course, Zappa's done long-form tunes, and of course many jazz guys have filled up a whole side with stuff. So that has been going on, but I think Tarkus is in 71 is ahead of its time. You know, everyone's going to applaud Yes for doing that Close to the Edge. But actually, if you listen to Tarkus is even more complex, even more convoluted, is even more compositionally grounded than Close to the Edge, which is really, Close to the Edge is a number of different songs, very well sequenced, but you feel like you go from one song to the next. Tarkus isn't like that. You hear Keith Emerson's almost classical compositional approach. He's in complete control. Keith Emerson is an absolute virtuoso keyboardist. He's like Jimi Hendrix on organ. He's also an early synth pioneer. You know, for many people, the first time they ever heard a Moog synthesizer would have been on an ELP album. Tarkus is fantastic. Pixels at an Exhibition is them really mining the territory that Keith Emerson had carved out with the Nice. You know, which is interpreting actual classical music. This is a sort of progressive rock staple, but the band that did it is ELP, and they did it on Pixels and Exhibition. Trilogy is absolutely fantastic. Brain salvage surgery is great. By this time, as happens with many bands, the musicians are in their late 20s, early 30s, and when musicians get to that point, they want to stand on their own. They're sort of being in a gang mentality that you have in your early 20s goes, and they want to do their own thing, and the way they do that is by bringing out the Works albums, which aren't like the early King Crimson albums, but are really solo showcases. If you think of Yes, I'm comparing them with Yes throughout this video, if you haven't noticed. If you compare them with Yes, what Yes do is they have a break and you get all the solo albums by each member. And some of those albums, I think Chris White Squire's Fish Out of Water is like almost like a Yes album. It's if John Anderson has done it, it would be one of the great Yes albums. ELP don't want to do that, and they do something quite clever, which I respect. Is they create a number of albums where everyone gets to be a solo musician on an ELP album. And Works has got some fantastic stuff on it. Pirates is fantastic. After that they do Love Beach. Now Love Beach is pretty appalling. But that's one album. We also get a couple of live albums. Welcome Back My Friends to the Show That Never Ends, which is a representation of them live. But as a youngster, I really loved the later Live at Montreal album. I thought that was a fantastic album. So as I've gone through it, I see that if I go through their albums on the whole, I love a lot of stuff off their albums. So what is it? What is it about ELP? I hope for the ELP fans, I've just gone through and given a really positive overview of this band. You know, a really incredible band. I think what it is, okay, and I'm going to go for it now. I think that a lot of the criticisms put against prog are unfair. I don't think prog is pretentious and overblown. I think that's like an inverted snobbery that came from music critics that didn't like the idea of certain bands being more intellectual and cleverer than them. They'd much rather champion punk bands where they could make themselves look good, which I think gave a massive disservice to punk. Punk was a reaction against prog. But as much as a reaction, because it's a reaction, it came out of prog. There are things I believe in punk. In punk's DNA, there is prog. It's in there. Those musicians weren't oblivious to prog, right? They were completely aware of prog. They'd grown up listening to prog. And so they knew what they were reacting against, and they didn't react against the whole thing. So punk bands like the Stranglers are pretty much just lifting wholesale from prog. And I really think that even bands like the Sex Pistols, John Lydon, I think John Lydon's an absolute genius. And what he brings to the Sex Pistols, him himself, his sort of huge listing that he's done, all the influences pulling in, but all the sort of British classical literary influences. You know, when you watch The Filth and the Fury, he's almost standing there like a Richard III character in front of a rock band. That's pure prog to me. You know, that's pure prog. If you take, you know, Peter Hamill's voice, then you take Ian Anderson's stage demeanour and put them together, with different clothes albeit, but still almost like some cross between some Nietzschean Zarathustra character and a court jester. That's what you get. You get Ian Anderson or you get John Lydon. I can see the parallels, all right? So punk for me, I think it's much more interesting in seeing that punk turned around to prog and said, right, you need to stop these things. This is no good. You need to draw in. You need to go back to that punk ethos that was there at the beginning of progressive rock. Right, it's there at the beginning. 21st century Schizoid Man is as much punk as it is prog. Both of those styles are embedded. That screaming voice at the beginning and the whole thing is so punky. It's upsetting. They're there to shake the system up. But it becomes decadent. Punk comes along and it draws itself in. The progressive rock musicians that were able to draw themselves in became some of the biggest selling artists of the 1980s. The musicians that had grown up in the 70s with being influenced by prog, but then post-punk started to create music. You know, I'm thinking of groups like Erasure, Visage, the Human League. All those bands, to greater or lesser extent, were influenced by prog as well, but because they drew themselves in, they became very successful pop artists. I don't think that any of the British pop artists from the early 80s had been touched by the progressive rock influence that they'd grown up with in the 70s. But for me, the accusations that were levelled at prog, which were unfair, you know, mostly applied to ELP. Okay? I think the pretentiousness, the over the top, almost like being a Crimson King in the court, you know. Does that make sense? You know, this idea that you are privileged and you should be there. The extravagance, the reliance on being loud and fast and virtuoso, being pretentious. I think ELP suffered from being pretentious. Now, even as I say that, I think yes, but there's always been a thing in the British aesthetic to pinprick authority, to be able to take the mickey out of it in a certain way. This is always there. It's in Monty Python. It's in The Laughing Policeman. It's in old George Formby films. It's in Shakespeare. The ability to deflate pomposity. And that is what punk is without a shadow of a doubt. And ELP almost like represent that. But I think the problem I had with ELP was that sort of music hall comedy aspect to what they did. And in that way they were almost like poking fun at themselves. And so maybe it's unfair to even level that at them. Yes, took themselves very, very seriously. The spiritual music is going to take you away. Here we've got a double album based upon the enlightened thoughts of some yogi, whatever it is, you know, Tables of Topographic Ocean. You know, and I love Yes. But ELP, yeah, they're pretentious and they're overblown, but they sort of know they are. That's the entertainment. They're entertainers. So, as I'm going through this video, what I'm finding as I talk about ELP is I am talking myself back into loving them again, which I didn't expect. You know, I'm trying to be as fair as I possibly can, and I'm trying to do the devil's argument, and I'm finding it really difficult to actually pinpoint what I don't like about them. Of course, you have musical preferences. I love Bruford's drumming. I love Phil Collins' drumming. I'm not so keen on Carl Palmer's drumming. Keith Emerson's incredible virtuoso, but there's a lot of Hammond organ on there. And when he's not doing Hammond organ, there's a lot of Mrs. Mills piano going on, which I was never keen on. Greg Blake's an incredible musician. I think the Father Christmas tune he wrote, Do You Believe Father Christmas? I think that's the greatest Christmas song ever written. It is, isn't it, really? That's a beautiful song. So, Greg Lake's such a talent, but his voice, I find his voice difficult. He's great on Schizoid Man because they've got all that distortion and he's shouting, but with ELP so many times, his voice actually grates. I think that's my issue with ELP is that instrumentally, I never warmed to them. But talking about them on this video, I've realised that they're fantastic because they are an overblown, over-the-top, in-your-face band, which I think, as they have said, all the money they made, all the success they had, they never went and took it away and lived on an island. They poured all the money back into that band to try and make it the most entertaining, mind-blowing experience you could have. And I think they knew that. I think there's an awareness with that that I think needs to be stated. So what you've got from this video, what is it with me and ELP? I think it's the fact that I just need to consider them again. You know, I think I need to go back. I did go back and listen to Trilogy the other day and absolutely loved it. I thought it was brilliant. So yeah, I love ELP. You know, you change. I loved them when I was 14, 15 years old. And as I've described elsewhere, I discovered ELP about a month before I discovered the Mavish Orchestra. And that really coloured my appreciation of them. It was like, oh my God, ELP, they're such virtuosos, incredible players, they can do this, this and that. Oh, there's this new band I've got, Mavish Orchestra. Oh my God! What do they compared like to ELP? I had both albums almost at the same, one album one week and then the Mavish Orchestra album the next week. And I think in my mind I've always compared ELP against the Mavish Orchestra, and you can't compare any band against the Mavish Orchestra. That was the greatest band of all time. And any ELP fans watching this are thinking, what's Andy saying? They were, just get your head round it. But ELP, maybe we all need to really rethink the sort of dogmatic, ideological, music critic view of the history of rock music. Maybe we need to go back and really re-evaluate these bands, even bands like ELP, even bands that most sane, normal people who are cool would never admit to liking. You know, what did John Peel say about them? That they were a waste of electricity, waste of talent and electricity. And that's gone with them the whole time. But I think, talking through this and really talking through them, I could see far more positives than I can see negatives. So that's where we're at. So I hope you have enjoyed this talk about ELP. I am having a prog themed month this June. If you've noticed, we've done lots of prog videos and very few fusion videos. So I hope you prog fans appreciate that. And if you want me to talk about anything else, I would love to, you know, but that's my take on ELP. I don't know what you think. I didn't expect to say all that. This is what I love about these videos. I didn't expect to say any of this. I thought I was going to slowly tease out what I didn't like about them, but I can't think of anything I don't like about them. Music's an incredible thing, isn't it? It's a really safe way of exploring what we like and what we don't like. And you know, all our morals and beliefs and ethics come from that. The ability to hold what we like in our hands and go, why do we like this? Is this still worth liking? Is there something good about this? And art and music allows us to do that in a safe environment where we could all have fun and all have enjoyment having this conversation. It's one of the beautiful things about music. So if you disagreed with me, great, brilliant. Let's all remain friends and let's all, you know, hold hands in our love of music and the wonderment of it. I'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much.